Welcome to Living Transplant,
the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the transplant program at Toronto General Hospital
and brings you open and honest conversations about the transplant experience.
My name is Courtney, and I'm the communications specialist for the Center for Living Organ Donation.
And my name is Brittany. I'm a bedside nurse in the Ajmira Transplant Center.
Full disclosure, we are not physicians.
No, and we are not here to give you medical advice.
Think of us like your guides through the world of transplant as we know it.
Whether transplant is your past, present, or future, your passion, or your curiosity,
Living Transplant will show you the world of transplant like you've never seen it before.
So our interview today is with a member of the ethics board at Women's College. Her name is Melissa Sadhu, and she donated a piece of her liver over to her brother who had biliary atresia when he was born, and ended up requiring a liver transplant.
So we have a couple corrections in this episode. Melissa makes reference to a Gary Cooper who donated his liver. It's not Gary Cooper, it's John Cooper. So that article that she mentions from the Star is in the show notes. And then also in the episode, when I am talking about the Circle of Excellence program, I say they, and what I mean by they is the Canadian Society of Transplantation. So CST is who I'm talking about. And that a link to that program and CST's website will be in the show notes as well.
The story is all about her experience with transplant over 10 years ago. So lots of things have changed in the last 10 years over at TGH. And we hope you enjoy the show. I don't want to give away too much, but have a listen. Let us know what you think. Rate, review, subscribe. on Apple Podcasts, and enjoy.
So welcome back to Toronto General, Melissa.
Thank you, Courtney. Nice to see you.
Britt, I think I was telling you that we met on Instagram.
Yeah.
Through the center's Instagram, which was kind of neat. I've actually met a few people that way now, so
crazy.
Shout out to our Instagram followers if you ever want to send me a message.
Maybe you'll be next on the show.
Yeah, you never know. So Melissa, what drew you to ethics?
Well, an opportunity presented itself to me back at the end of 2008, actually. I was working in the pharmaceutical industry for a clinical research organization. So we were running clinical trials on behalf of pharmaceutical sponsors. So a friend of mine transitioned to academic research, and he was working in research quality auditing and clinical monitoring. And he said, there's actually a position open at the UHN Research Ethics Board. Why don't you apply? And I thought, this could be an opportunity, a great opportunity to work on the other side of, the academic side as opposed to the industry side. And I have to say, working at UHN was quite the experience. I was able to bring my clinical trials experience and sort of sit and watch the UHN oncology board, the multidisciplinary boards, and see how they actually review all the protocols, the research protocols that they receive, and the difficult decisions they have to make. The thing is, it's interesting. Once you look at these research publications and you think, wow, what an amazing scientist to come up with this research protocol and run this amazing study and have these groundbreaking, impactful findings. But no one ever looks at the actual publication and thinks, wow, that must have been difficult for the Research Ethics Board to review and approve. Because, for instance, here at UHN, you have these procedures that are developed here. You've got surgical techniques. You have the organ donor program. I actually worked with people during the paired exchange research application. So I wasn't part of that directly, but my close coworker was part of the review and approval process for that. So it's quite amazing. If anyone ever has a chance to volunteer on a research ethics board, you should strongly think about it, because research ethics boards have to be comprised of scientific members, legal members who are specialized in health, law, and privacy. So community members as well, someone who's actually not affiliated with the institution and someone who has no research ethics background, someone who can look at the consent forms and actually understand and if there's actual the lay terms being understandable. And also we also need people with various backgrounds, so statisticians as well, and also it's not just scientists, but you've got a good mixture of experience in order to make those decisions. And there is voting involved. You have to meet quorum requirements. So as long as you meet the requirements, research can be reviewed and approved.
Wow, cool. That's intricate, detailed.
Yeah.
It is. I highly recommend it. It's
Nurses too?
Nurses too. Nurses, pharmacists. Yeah, exactly. And we call it good nerdy fun, and it is. You could sit there and listen to some of these investigators present their research, and just the questions and the exchange, and people become really passionate about certain things. Like once I was in a meeting and we had a naturopath, and she made this one statement: we need to be careful because this is a new research technique, and a lot of people, like a lot of lay people, may think, oh, if it's new, it's got to be better. Mm-hmm. But new means it's not proven yet. Research is a theory yet to be proven, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't just, like, people always think, oh, the old technique might not be right. But no. Like, the new technique still needs to be further studied, right? So that's the thing. You have to, like, language really matters, and you need to, make sure that studies are not, you're not using coercive language, or, you're not overselling the benefits of being in research. You got to just it's always the balance of clinical equipoise, right? That we're always after.
Okay. So, Melissa, what is your connection to transplant?
Well, my connection to transplant happened while I was working here at the UHN Research Ethics Board. My younger brother Donald, he was born with biliary atresia. And so when he was very young, he was, I think, about 3 or 4 months old, he needed to have what's called the Kasai procedure done, where you sort of fashion a temporary, because he was born without a bile duct, so you fashion a temporary sort of bile duct out of the baby's intestines. Sweet. So it was a procedure developed by medical surgical Dr. Morio Kasai in Japan. And basically, my brother ended up being the recipient of this procedure in Miami in 1976. That surgeon who performed the procedure, literally, that was his first time ever performing it. I would imagine he probably might have learned the technique at a conference that he attended recently, and they presented it to my parents that, like, literally, this is our only option. Like, unless you want to fly your son to Japan and have the procedure done there, where it's been done many times, that's the other option. So they did the procedure, and it was literally one of those. There's something like, it's like, I think it would have cost them back then like $30,000-$40,000, which in the 70s, is like really a substantial amount of money.
Like, in 2020.
Exactly.
It's a substantial amount of money.
A sum of money, right? Exactly.
I don't have that. No.
So yeah, I think there was like a telethon, one of those, raise money to save Donald, like those things. And then of course, my mom and her relatives all
the 70s version of a GoFundMe.
I was going to say it.
Exactly. The old school, like, you need to call in and like actually like give your credit card number. Yeah. And so that was, that carried him through until his early 30s, when he started to experience liver failure, and his bilirubin was up, and his jaundice started again, like as same thing that you would see when he was much younger. So I was unaware, actually, of the UHN Living Donor Program, and I worked literally across the street at the Toronto Hydro Building for the Ethics Board. But my brother was under the care of Dr. Leslie Lilly, and he still is today, actually. And he actually said to me once, "Did you actually know there's a Living Donor Program at Toronto General Hospital?" And I said, "No, I had no idea, and I work here." I mean, so many programs that I had no idea.
That is the funny thing about UHN, is it's so big. I feel like sometimes you're just reading the news and it'll be like, amazing discovery of whatever at UHN, and you're like, oh, what?
Exactly.
They just did something recently in the news, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then it just so happened, it was so timely, because then, like, literally days later, I still get the Toronto Star delivered at home, and there was a living liver donor story. I think his name was Mr. Gary Cooper. Okay. So you could find him on the Toronto Star website, and his story was unbelievable. His daughter experienced liver failure, and then I think she was on the transplant list, and he didn't match, but then she somehow ended up making some great recovery, and she survived. And he was so moved by the whole fact that she survived, that he signed up to be an anonymous donor.
Right.
And he ended up being a match for someone, and he donated.
That's
and
incredible.
His account of the experience is amazing. So if you ever get a chance to find him on Toronto Star, I'm pretty sure his name's Gary Cooper.
Okay,
Sweet.
cool. We'll put that in the show notes. Hopefully we can find it.
For sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the Kasai procedure carried your brother all the way through to his 30s, and he lived just like a normal life up until then?
He was, I'd say, like, he has a twin brother that's 3 minutes older. And he pretty much lived, for the most part, a normal life, except he would easily get like colds or flus, or sometimes his platelet count would be low. He's definitely the brother of the two twins, the one that would get sick more often.
Right.
But otherwise, he didn't really need any medication or anything, or he never had to take much time off school. It's just he was more prone to getting sick, I would say.
That's incredible. That's wild.
Right.
So was the twin of Donald, your other brother, was he ever tested for any type of liver disease or anatomical liver issues?
He was perfectly healthy. And it's interesting because I think my mother actually was born with a twin, and she passed away at age 3 months. So I suspect that she may have had maybe she also had biliary atresia. I'm not sure. I mean, this is like the 1940s, right? So, yeah, so maybe there's a genetic component to it in our family that I'm not sure about. So, yeah, the twins definitely do run in our family. There's literally 5 sets of twins for 3 generations.
Oh, my.
Wow.
It doesn't skip a generation in our family. So, yeah, so it's interesting. The funny thing is at UHN, once I submitted my application and I wrote that, the recipient, my brother, actually has an identical twin, they actually screened my brother as well, of course. But at the time, he was in the restaurant field, and he was like sort of engaging in the typical chef diet. So
were you the second person to apply then?
I started first.
Okay.
And then once they realized, he has a twin, it might be better. My brother might be better off with a twin donating. And then my brother unfortunately didn't pass because of his liver enzymes being a bit elevated. Then they put me back on the front burner.
Right.
Which I think, honestly, looking back, it just worked out perfectly because I don't think mentally and psychologically, I don't know if my brother, I think he was a bit too overwhelmed with the risks, and me being in research and working here at UHN and being a research geek, like I was like, sign me up. This is so cool, right? Whereas my other brother was like, there's no way I would never, he's like, aren't you afraid? So no, I think it just worked out well in the end that I ended up being the match, and everything fortunately worked out very well with the surgery, because I think my brother was a bit more afraid than he let on.
Right. Which makes perfect sense. It is major surgery. Was this your first major surgery?
First and only, knock on wood.
Yeah. Okay, so you start the assessment process. Did you tell any of your family? Did you tell your brother, or did you kind of just go for it?
I told no one. Literally, I'll never forget it. I was literally at my desk at Toronto Hydro, and I was trying to get my application in because I knew the blood work had to start, and it was Friday at 3:00, and I had to ask my coworker. I needed him to be my witness. And the thing is we had worked together in pharma for so many years, and now we both found ourselves on the other side, with the consent form in front of us, and we're analyzing the risks. And I believe on the consent form it said, make no mistake, this surgery is just as dangerous as triple bypass, which I thought was amazing in the consent form, because it laid out all the risks, and then that was really good for someone, who, if I was someone who was a layperson, I think that was a really good way to assess how and present the risks. Yeah, it was. I thought the consent
I wouldn't
form,
have thought of that.
Right,
and I would be like, oh.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more and it's funny because when I looked at the risks, and I told Dr. Levy this when I finally got to meet him, my first assessment with him, it's interesting how people assess risk, right? It's subjective. Risk for everyone is different. I wasn't afraid of death. I think I had a 0.3% chance of dying. I was actually afraid of the depression. Apparently some of the donors experience depression because you go from being your average person, your average self, then you're a hero, and then back to your average self. And that's exactly what Dr. Levy explained to me, because I asked him how would someone end up being experiencing a bit of depression, and then he said, yeah, that's actually what we found. And he said, but you don't seem like the type that's going to end up being depressed. So he said, I'm sure, things will be fine. But the death part, for whatever reason, I actually never believed that I had a chance of dying. Not once. Not once did I ever think this could be it for me. I don't know why. Looking back, that never was a reality to me, even though it probably should have been.
Do you think that it was because you trusted the team?
I think so, because of the track record. And I have to say that piece on Gary Cooper, his description of it and being part of the whole process of the screening and then the surgical and then the follow-up afterwards, is that it was such a well-designed procedure that there's almost zero room for error, really. Right? Which, of course, you can't promise that for any procedure, any surgical procedure.
Right.
And it being one of the top 5 transplant programs in the world. Mm-hmm. That was a big seller as well.
Yeah, you're like, well, they must know what they're doing.
Exactly.
How does that conversation go with your brother when you tell him, hey, I've been approved to be your donor?
That was quite the conversation. My brother's a financial analyst. And at first he said, I think he was overwhelmed because we knew the call was coming, whether it was a yes or no, that I'd be a match. But I think he really, truly didn't want me to actually go through with it. But I said to him, I understand that, but I need you to understand, like, you're now at this critical point where what's your plan? Is your plan that tonight you're hoping that unfortunately someone will get into a motorcycle accident and this guy's going to be, a perfect match for you? Because what are the chances that that's going to happen tonight, right? You need to understand you're going to get to a point where it's literally a point of no return, and you will rapidly decline. And then there was this long silence, and then he said, I am willing to accept your offer. Like it was like some kind of like negotiation, and there's money on the table or a mortgage deal. Yeah, exactly. I'm willing to accept your offer.
Great.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Glad to know you accepted. So yeah, it was all of a sudden it became very technical and formal out of nowhere. Right. Like yeah.
And how did the rest of your family take it?
My mom, at the time, she was still practicing nursing, but being a medical surgical nurse for, 40 years at the time by then.
She knows too much.
She knew too much. And that's exactly what Dr. Levy said. He said, your mom knows too much. So that's when, and again, I'm not a parent. I'm a dog owner. That's it. And so I couldn't imagine what it's like to have two of your kids out of your three kids going for surgery the same day. And I think for her, she just took it upon herself to just keep it all in instead of calling her friends and calling relatives and saying, oh my goodness, I actually now need support. I'm the one who needs emotional support to get through this. I think she said she didn't really eat or sleep for 3 days before the surgery. And it's like, I told her, I'm like, you need to get it together. You need to have friends that are going to be with you in the waiting room during that day, during this, when the procedure happens. So yeah, I think she was just a ball of nerves.
That's something we want to explore as well on the podcast, of just healthcare providers kind of in the position of caregiver, in the position of patient. It's so hard for people who are used to taking care of people to go back and be like, hey, I need help actually right now. This is my moment when I need support. Both my children are going into surgery. It'd be a hard thing to wrap your head around. I don't know, Britt, you're a nurse. Do you find it hard to ask for help when you need it?
Yeah, but I haven't been in a position, knock on wood, where true. I've had to give that up. Do you know what I mean? But I always tell my patients and my patients' family members or their mothers, because we work with a lot of young donors or young recipients. Right. And I'm like, if I were a parent, I can understand your frustration and where you would need this support. So I try and empathize and lead with that, but I've never personally had to. Yeah, but I also am trying to mentally prepare myself for that day when it does come, when I have to give a loved one over to a different healthcare team that's not my own. So when I asked you why you were not worried about death, is it because you trusted the team because you work with the team, right? Or you work in these walls, right?
Right, exactly.
So and I think I mentioned this in another episode. If I were to get a transplant, I would want it done here because I trust the team, but also at the same time it's I don't know, privacy and stuff, but I know this team, whereas if I go to any other hospital, not to knock any other hospital,
of course,
but I just don't know it.
Absolutely.
It feels weird to me,
right,
and
that's a good point that you make, because I remember my brother just 2.5 months before the transplant, he woke up and he was feeding his dog and he started coughing up blood. He had to come in that day here at Toronto Gen to the ER because my mom was still a practicing nurse at the time. And when the nurse came to draw blood for my brother, she couldn't watch. She pulled the curtain. Yeah, she couldn't watch someone drawing blood. And I think in that moment, if she could have, she would have done it herself. Right?
Even me as a patient, when I go to certain places, I'm like I once had to get blood work done, normal. And I have to bite my tongue because I'm like, just let me do it. Just let me do it. I'll just give me the needle. I'll do it myself. But it's because it's hard to watch someone else do your work. You're
absolutely,
right.
Absolutely.
And then as a nurse, I see it. I hate when people are standing over me and hovering and being like, you're doing it wrong, or do it like this. So it's super annoying. But at the same time, I feel like I want to do that for someone else and be like, you're doing it wrong. So I would just do the exact same thing, close the curtain and leave.
My mom, she used to work in nursing homes too, right? So if there was that 95-year-old with the vein that was difficult, they're like, all right, we're going to get it. Dolores in here. We need to get
Is that her name?
That's
right?
Brittany.
Yeah.
Right?
Brittany's the.
So you're the
good with
goddess
veins.
now.
Yeah.
The goddess.
Right? That's what they used to call, what was her name? The one nurse that was in transplant at the time. Oh my gosh. They used to call her the goddess because she was so good. She's Jamaican. Oh my goodness. Natalie.
Brittany.
Is she?
Oh, I love Natalie.
Natalie's the best.
I loved Natalie.
She used to sell like hair extensions on the side. I'm like,
Stick.
what's your side hustle? She
She's
invented
great.
the side hustle before it was a side hustle term. Like literally.
Nat was good.
You know what? Wasn't she
trained-
amazing? They called her the goddess. One of her patients.
but she is a goddess.
No,
like
she
looking
is.
at her, you're like,
She is. She
Yeah.
is the goddess.
Okay, so for 3 days leading up to the surgery, your mom is panicking, not eating. What are you like 3 days leading up to the surgery? It's all becoming a reality.
I was literally trying to figure out how I was going to tie up all my projects. Like I needed to like have them in good standing because I was going to be on leave for at least 10 to 12 weeks. So, and I knew that the thing is if I didn't finish some of my projects, then unfortunately it would be just my work would be reassigned to my other coworkers who were already overwhelmed. So basically it was a lot. I worked the whole weekend. The transplant was Monday morning. I had to check in at 6 a.m. for surgery. And I literally finished my last project at 6:30 p.m. like the night before on the Sunday. I sent in my last documents to the chair of the board for review. I literally went to St. Mike's Cathedral. I like lit a candle for my brother and I, said some prayers, went home, started packing. I made my light meal, which was ramen noodle soup and pierogies at the time. I don't know.
A winning
And a side of
combination.
edamame. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Whatever was like easy to make because, I had to get it done. And I just packed like I was being deported. Like I had my hospital bag, whatever I could throw in there. And I think I probably
a
went to
wad
bed-
of cash.
Exactly, right? All right, and I had a rosary so that my mom like knew I could pray. So and then it was like 2 a.m. I think by the time I tried to settle into bed. And I thought, well, what's the point, right? Like I have to be there at 6 a.m. And I think I woke up 3 hours later, showered and got ready. I made sure I took a really good shower because I knew what I was in for. And so my mom was literally trying to keep it together. And I said, we're going to get in a cab. There's like a sheet of ice on our sidewalk. There's no way we're going to like drive to Toronto Jan Park. And it was just a cold day, wintry day. And so she was like sitting there at the dining table trying to put on makeup. And I said to her, no. You have all day to do that. You can put your face on when we get to Toronto Jan. I need to be there at 6 a.m. I'm not going to be late because you're your lipstick. Like it's just like, but I think she was just again trying to maintain a sense of normalcy and like,
Right.
And I have to say, like, it was amazing how during the day, apparently she was totally fine with my surgery. Everything went well. I had Dr. David Grant as my surgeon, so I was lucky because of course. Who else would you want? And so he finished a bit early. He's so used to this procedure, right? And with my brother, obviously, it took longer for him being the recipient. And my brother Don's, his bowels had been a little bit affected by his liver, being so diseased and so atrophied that the procedure ended up taking at least an hour longer than it should have. And that later that day, when my friends and family were starting to check in on me when I was able to have visitors, my mom was like, it was like Christmas Day. Once everything was fine, everyone was stable. She was a different person, and it was like, wow, finally, like she can actually be happy and excited again, and know that everything worked out.
Yeah,
right? Because
for
like you
sure.
said, the nurses, they know too much, right? They know all the things that could go wrong, right? And at that point, you literally don't have like any control anymore. It's like literally in the surgeon in God's hands. So that's it, right?
Yeah. So did you have any moments of being like, oh man, this is really happening. I'm about to go on the table.
Like when you're going into the doors,
Yeah.
or like the anesthesia,
Oh, let me tell you,
like
it was-
IV, like what
It
was
couldn't have been. I really wish that was filmed because I wish I could watch that because it was one of the best moments of my life because I was literally laying in the surgical check-in bay and they were introducing me to my transplant team. There was a resident who came in to say, okay, you're here today. You're having left liver donor surgery done. And like, I'm going to mark you now for surgery.
Wasn't
so
your
they
mom
followed.
trying to get you to take a prayer book?
That's what she was right beside me. Literally, she was beside me, and she literally had. She's like, "Here's the rosary," and then I had my nurse. She was taking my vitals and everything, and making sure everything was fine. And then my mom was like, And then the nurse said, she's like, I'm Catholic too. I get it. Like, just don't worry, right? Like, because I'm like, I'm sorry, I actually have to get through these beads, right? Like, I know you got a job to do, but I'm like, so, like and then, they introduced Dr. Grant to me. And then it was great, but I didn't see because there was a curtain pulled. And then they said, oh, here comes your anesthesiologist. And all of a sudden he rounded the corner, and my mom's she's still like a bag of nerves, right? And so he rounded the corner and he said, hey, Melissa, let's do this. And I thought, my goodness, he's a research ethics board member.
Yes.
So at first, I should have been happy, right? But I'm thinking, what is he going to see? And I have to face him again in a meeting, and I have to work with him, right? So like, I think my mom caught wind of my reaction and realized I knew him.
Oh, God.
And she burst out laughing. It was exactly the moment of comedic relief we needed, or like she needed. But then that's when the panic set in for me. Like I was loving everything. I'm like, this is so cool. I've never been in surgery. This is neat. Yeah. This is exciting. And then that's when I thought, oh no, I know him. Like I should be
so
like,
close.
so close. And I'm like, but that was literally I think I took it as a sign. I'm like, this must be a sign from God. Like, you are not going to die. And like, if God has a sense of humor, I felt him laughing in that moment. Like, like literally my mom and the nurse both started laughing because they saw I couldn't imagine what my reaction was in the moment. And he's like, are you ready? Let's do this. And I'm like, oh, and I think my mom was happy too, because at least she realized that someone in there in the OR, my mom obviously couldn't be there.
Right.
Someone actually would be like, on my side and would have like a personal interest, right? And so then he was fiddling with stuff behind me, and he said, so he started asking me questions like, what did you do before you came to UHN? Where did you work? How did you get into ethics? And then after the third question, I was out. So it was good. He did he literally pulled a fast one on me, and it was perfect, right? Nice. And I have to say, it did. It was like someone was looking out for me that day, because when I woke up in recovery, I remember going through the screening process, and they said, even though everything looks good on all the scans and you look like a perfect match, there's a 3% chance that you won't be a match. And if we open you up and we see that that's unfortunately in that 3% chance, we literally close you up and that's it. And you can't be a donor. So I thought, oh my gosh. When I woke up, I think I must have been delusional, because I could hear someone who sounded exactly like my brother beside me, like fumbling and trying to get out of his bed. And then I started panicking. And I think it's just your subconscious takes over, and it's like, oh my God, I wasn't a match. And it was this overwhelming sense of defeat. Like I can't, as if some huge wave crashed over me and that was it. Like, we were done, right? And it's like, I don't know how to say it without sounding so dramatic, but then all of a sudden I started calling up my brother's name, and then my anesthesiologist, Dr. Vicencio, came over and he said, no, Melissa, he's not here. Your brother's in surgery. Like, he's not here. You're here in recovery. He's in surgery. And let me tell you, I needed him in that moment to just reassure me that that is actually what's happening. Because I guess I was just, I don't know if I was delusional or if I was just like, I had gone into surgery with that subconsciously as a worry that was in my mind. I don't know, but because I've never experienced anything like that in my life. Mm-hmm. And that was incredibly reassuring. And he said, you did really well. The surgery went really well. I have to say, to have someone there to reassure me that I actually knew, to say everything's fine. You know what? Your brother's in surgery. Don't worry. That was like everything. Like, I can't speak to that enough. That moment was like, oh my gosh, the reassurance was amazing.
It's so lucky he was there.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
It really did work out.
I mean, earlier you spoke about being terrified about the depression as opposed to the death, but I actually think the idea of waking up post-surgery and realizing nothing happened and that you actually weren't a viable donor, that's really scary to me. And heartbreaking. It must be devastating to the people all it happens just to find it. Oh, well, and with liver too, it's so urgent. You really do need to get it done as quickly as possible. And I can't even imagine what that feeling is like. And to even, you experienced just a sliver of that, it must have been horrible.
It was, because it was I'm like, why am I hearing his voice? And it's and I don't know if it was another patient that was struggling, or maybe it was literally something I imagined in my mind, but no, having the reassurance that no, everything's fine, everything worked out. Yeah. So
nice. What was it like the first time you saw Donald after surgery? I
have to say, I'll never forget it, because he, I believe, was in the ICU almost 48 hours post-surgery. So I didn't get to see him, of course. And then once he was able to have a visit, the way he described it was waking up, like seeing his new room where he was and like knowing that he survived the surgery, I think he was overwhelmed. And he said to his nurse, like, can you believe it? Like, I've survived, and like, can you believe my sister donated? Can you believe my sister did this? And the nurse was like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. She's like, stop, you're going to make me cry. So she said, that's it. We're going to get your sister in here, or we're going to get you to your sister. And she figured out a way. She like wheeled him into my room. Actually, yeah. Nice. That's why that picture that you have is,
We'll share that picture in the show notes too.
She was amazing. I remember
amazing.
She was sweet. She was really sweet. She was Greek. I don't know why I remember her being Greek. And she was just really sweet. And she just said, no. What a story. She's like, we got to make sure you guys see each other. And it just so happened in my room, like that day, and the sun was shining through the room. It was just one of those moments that you're like, it all worked out somehow. And it was a great picture. My brother hates that photo because he still had the oxygen and he still looks sickly. Right. I love that photo because I think it's a great photo. But
authentic,
right.
Absolutely. So did your brother have any complications post-surgery?
No, none. Like literally they said, like the transplant team, they said your brother did so well with the liver that he got that he is being discharged a week early.
Wow.
I know. They said his numbers came down, like his like bilirubin, like it's insane. It's like it was like a dead cell phone and then you put in this new battery and like there you go, right? Yeah, exactly. So it was like Christmas Day when they discharged him, like because it was literally a week after the surgery when it should have been 2 weeks, right? So but then I had complications. So I had to stay another week instead of being discharged after 1 week. And it's interesting because my mom didn't, because my brother had already gone home and he was wondering and asking, why are you still in the hospital? Shouldn't you have gone home by now? And I kind of wanted to be, tell the white lie of, just they're keeping me more for observation another day or two. And then my mom, of course, didn't want to lie. And she's like, and then the nurses in the room, like we asked them, what should we do? And I said, Mom, I didn't come this far for my brother to be at home recovering and then like be worrying. He needs to focus on his recovery. Like he and his wife need to like focus on his recovery and nothing else. Don't be stressed out about me. And so the nurses, it was a bit of a dilemma for them. I remember there's one younger nurse calling in another senior nurse saying, what do we do? Like, how do you handle this moment? This is like, do we call my brother and tell him, Melissa's probably going to be here maybe up to another week. And my mom just refused to lie. And so, eventually we had to say, I'll be there for at least another 3 days. My white blood cell count was elevated, but I had no fever. So they had to go in and they had to do the ultrasound guided needle and have a bag to drain. There was some fluid in the space where the liver had been like vacated from, like the empty space, and they tested it for any infection. There was no infection. So it was bizarre. It kind of stumped the team. But I made a recovery and then I was discharged a week later. So it was fine.
So you worked at UHN at the time that you donated, but did you get paid leave to donate? Because I know you donated like a while ago, like almost 10 years ago, right?
10 years ago.
Like living donation is still fairly new. I think a lot of places consider it still, I guess UHN included at the time, an elective surgery because you're not the one who's sick. So, right. And it's more, I think, that just like the framework doesn't really like exist to understand these things. So how did that kind of work out? Like, because obviously you need at least, I forget how much time, 6 weeks to recover, something like that.
You said 10 to
11. They told me like to plan for 10 to 12 weeks.
10 to 12. Yeah. So that's a lot of time off work. You'd have to be in a very specific financial situation to be okay with that. What was that like for you? And what was it like knowing that you were doing something for your brother that was life-saving, but that you wouldn't get paid time off to do it?
Excellent question. It was interesting because here I was working at UHN and this procedure is developed here, right? Yeah. But according to the HR guidebook for coverage, I wouldn't qualify because I wasn't sick. It was my brother that was sick. I was healthy, right? So I didn't qualify really. I didn't meet the terms for short-term leave, for sick leave. So I had to discuss with my director if there was a way, like would I have to take unpaid leave? Luckily, was able to help with HR, and HR was able to cover me. They made an exception. It's interesting because research staff are not unionized. So this was something that I guess it's not something that normally HR policies would account for, especially back then, right? Someone wanting to be a donor. Mind you, if I was pregnant and going on maternity leave, I would have coverage, right? So, I think that's what some of my coworkers were really surprised at the ethics board. They said, well, it's kind of interesting because, you've helped us cover so many mat leaves, but yet you can't take like 12 weeks off.
It is. It's very, it is very backwards. And I actually never thought of that until about an hour ago when you mentioned it. I was like, oh.
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
very strange.
Unfortunately,
And
right?
I think
Yeah.
today, I mean, this won't obviously be accurate when we release this episode, but it is, November 2020. Today, they are launching the Circle of Excellence, which is something the Center for Living Organ Donation is helping to support. And the Circle of Excellence recognizes employers whose employees choose to become living donors, and it provides them paid time off and basically all the supports that they need to eliminate the barrier of
Donating.
Yeah, donate, like the financial kind of barrier that is to donating. So that's something that hopefully we can get a lot of employers to do, because when you think about it, like no matter how large your company is, like the chances, well, in such a large company or any company, the chances of someone then being a living donor in that company, like you might not even ever have to follow through on it, but you could just have that set up in place.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not, and then you get recognized for it. So the benefit to the organizations is huge. And
Absolutely.
then, when the time does come, the benefit to the people is literally life-saving.
Right.
Yeah.
So right. And to add to that, I didn't realize until my brother told me when we were going through the screening process that Dr. Lilly told him, your sister, if she's a match and she donates to you, she's actually saving 2 lives, because the person who gets the deceased liver that would have
was
been
supposed
behind
to
my
go to
brother on the
him.
list, would have gone to him,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So exactly. So you're saving money. If I get paid time leave to do this, I never would have thought of it back then. Then you're saving money for the healthcare system. Someone's
Exactly.
not occupying a bed. Like people need to understand it does translate into healthcare dollars. Like being
Totally.
saved,
And
right?
like one of the things, I feel like people don't really think about universal healthcare aside from the fact that, we have free healthcare. But like when you really think about little things like this that we can do to save the system money, it benefits everyone.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's the same, especially with like kidney and dialysis and like, so
Right.
yeah,
Right.
it saves lives.
Right,
It
it
saves
does.
money and lives.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you definitely have to be in a position to be able to donate financially. You have to have benefits for some of the drugs that you have to be on post,
Right.
which I don't assume they're cheap. Like if they
No.
because
well,
donors
for the
have to be
recipients, definitely not.
for
No.
recipients definitely
Oh, no.
not. But if they were a donor, and you you're not on like a crazy amount of drugs, but you're on like
No.
Tinzaparin.
The
pain meds and
Tinzaparin,
stuff.
it was just the Tinzaparin, and like I had to get Tylenol 3s.
Right, exactly.
That
It's
was
pain
it.
meds and
Yeah.
blood thinners. But at the same time, for somebody that may not have the resources to pay for that, what do?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
No, absolutely. And actually, that's a really good point, because my sister-in-law said, you're not going to pay for Tinzaparin. I'll pay for it, because I wasn't covered for it because I normally wouldn't need it. I don't have an existing health condition
Fair,
that
yeah.
would require Tinzaparin,
Tinzaparin,
right?
yeah.
So it was only like, I don't know, $200-$300. But she said, no, it's the principle. You're not going to pay out of pocket.
Exactly.
when
It's the,
you just did this life-saving
thing. Exactly.
procedure.
It's
So yeah,
it's
these
the
all these things you
principle.
don't think about, right?
Yeah.
The principle, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things the center is, really working on, is increasing access to living donation, because there's so many factors you don't really think about that just because you could donate anatomically, like
Right.
Doesn't
there are
mean
a
that
lot
you-
of can
other
you take time off
factors.
of work for the assessment appointments? Do you have a car? Is it
you
easy
have a
for you to
part-
get to Toronto General? Like all this
All
stuff.
of these things that I never thought of. Like I was so fortunate that I worked across the street. I literally had just had to, on my lunch break, on my coffee breaks, right?
That's
Insane.
crazy.
People don't realize, right? But hopefully with stem cells, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah,
You
who
know,
knows
in
what the future is? It could be, I think there's someone in Kitchener who's looking into 3D printed kidneys. So who knows, in the future we could just have
Pretty sweet.
we could just have that, and
Right.
or we could eliminate the need for transplants, or all of there would be no need for human organs. So who knows what the future has in store? Actually, one of our founders, I interviewed her and her husband, who donated his kidney to her through paired exchange. And I did ask her a question of are you scared of, potentially needing another kidney? And her answer was no, I'm in Toronto. I can go to Toronto General, and who knows what they'll have come up with in the time that I need another
that's a great
kidney.
answer.
I know, isn't that great?
That's a great answer.
Yeah, she's wonderful. How's your brother doing now?
Thank you for asking. He's great. I have to say he's really lucky. He's really lucky, knock on wood. He hasn't had any major rejection episodes. But otherwise, yeah, he was able to return to normal life. He went back to work in July. So that would have been about 4 months post-transplant.
Thank you, Dr. Lily.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you, Dr. Lily.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Lily.
I
Dr.
determine when he
Lily.
goes back to work, not you.
Right? I know.
The power move
Dr.
right
Lily,
there.
honestly, my
But
brother doesn't
Dr.
realize.
Lily is a powerhouse. That is
he?
exactly how he operates.
See, I only met him once,
Oh,
really.
I love working with
But it's
Dr.
interesting,
Lilly.
when I went back to work, I couldn't work on Dr. Lily's projects because conflict of interest,
No,
right?
fair.
Oh,
Yeah,
of course,
like
yeah.
Dr. Lilly, Dr. Levy, anybody, like I couldn't work on anybody who was in my circle of care or who was in my brother's circle of care. I couldn't work in their projects anymore.
Makes
Interesting
perfect
though,
sense.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, Dr. Lilly, I said to my brother, I said, I hope you realize how fortunate you are
To have
He's
him as
been in
your-
his care since 2003.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Oh,
Crazy.
wow.
Yeah, all right.
That's awesome.
I don't know how my brother would have managed without him. Yeah. So,
What's something you want everyone to know about living organ donation?
excellent question. I would love for everyone to know that it is, it's not frightening. It's not scary. It's, if you sign your donor card, you can save up to 8 lives, right? I mean, now we're in this pandemic. Every day is a gift for all of us. You just don't know what each day will bring. But for living donor surgery, I'd have to say, here at Toronto Gen, because the program is so well established and they've worked every detail out, like everything from the psychological aspects, the diet, the time you have to take off work, the recovery aspects, everything. And the team that you have, I had, like, going even through the screening process, I had literally assessments with 2 internal medicine specialists, 1 anesthesiologist, 2 surgeons. I had an RN transplant coordinator. I had a social worker. Like, it was just such a robust team in my circle of care that I have to say that it's not frightening at all. And there's not one detail that, like, not one stone unturned. Like, it's literally, they've thought of everything from start to finish. And I think absolutely, I would highly recommend, if anyone is ever in that position that I was in, where it's, you think about donating for a family member or a close friend, or, I know someone who donated a kidney to, like, her son's classmate because she just thought, oh my God, what if I'm a match? And she ended up being a match, and it was worked out that she donated here at Toronto Gen and back to work in no time. Like, it was,
Amazing.
People need to realize that it's not, yes, it is high risk. Obviously, it's a surgical procedure, but it's not something that you need to be so afraid of because, living, like, we're blessed that here in Toronto, we literally have these surgeries happening every day, right? Mm-hmm. And so, the team has just this amazing assembly of, like, the right healthcare professionals. And also, it's just, I have to say, it's quite the experience. It's something that, if you have the health and you're able to donate and you can save a life. In my case, I was told that I was lucky enough to save not only my brother's life, but the next person on the transplant list, who was waiting for a liver from a deceased donor. I think I would highly recommend, going forward and signing to be a living donor. And I think it was probably the most amazing experience of my life, really.
That's incredible.
Really.
Yeah, being healthy is such a privilege.
It
and
is.
if you can share it with someone else, like your friend who donated to her son's classmate, like, putting yourself in that situation, it's like, there, but for the grace of God go I. Like,
right.
That could be your kid just as easily. And, like, if you have the health, the energy, the, like, kind of mindset to do it, and it doesn't change your life, then why wouldn't you?
Definitely. The response, I have to say, it was interesting because the chair of the ethics board at the time, she herself was an anesthesiologist, and she said, I don't really believe in living organ donation because that's now 2 lives at risk. You have one person who was sick and now you're putting someone else. But she was the first non-family member who visited me after the procedure that day, because she happened to be here dropping off a patient because she was still a practicing anesthesiologist. And she checked in on me and she said, I heard your brother did well as well. And, this is still amazing. Like, she's amazing that you did this. And I'll make sure to tell everyone at work everything's fine. So yeah, even though for her it was controversial, it's interesting how the ethics around organ donation, it's still quite a real dilemma for many people,
yeah,
right?
For sure. I watched Susan Abbey give a presentation on, like, the psychology of living donors, but she starts the presentation by saying the rule of medicine is first do no harm, and she's like, well, we're going to do a little bit of harm.
Right, exactly.
But,
And someone had said to me during the screening process that a lot of women who come forward in their 30s, at the time I was in my 30s, they're usually women who are childless, and it's a way for them to sort of live on in someone else without having a child, right, of their own. So it's sort of like, it's interesting, the psychology behind it. They did some research on the female donors, and a lot of them are women who are in their 30s who don't have a family of their own. Like it's interesting.
Having interviewed a lot of living donors, they are majority women, and everything you just described.
Really?
Yeah, just solely on my own experience. Yeah.
Amazing.
I think it's also important to note that signing your donor card is definitely important, but it's also, what's more important is informing your family members and telling them that you are most definitely willing to donate your organs, because
it's up to them.
It's up to them.
They can override your decision. Most people don't know that.
Yeah.
I actually only found that out after the surgery, when I ended up working in critical care and trauma medicine. After I left the ethics board, I worked on an organ donation project, and I didn't know that. Yeah, your family can override your decision.
If your mom or dad says nope,
or your spouse,
or whoever that may be,
right,
says no, I don't want them to donate their organs, then that decision overrides what you decided for yourself.
And in that moment, that decision is so hard if they haven't had that conversation with you, based on what I've heard.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
if one of your loved ones doesn't have the memory of you saying, this is what I want, like it probably won't happen.
It's the one thing I remember that was the most important thing that came out of our transplant training was hearing that. And I remember going back home that day and telling both my parents, and was like, this is the most important thing you need to know, is that I want to donate my organs.
Right.
So no matter what you think, I think this, and this is what I want for myself. And they're like, okay.
Right.
And they're like, why are you telling me?
Exactly.
I'm like, yeah.
Even though this is a very enjoyable experience, ladies, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your story.
It's a pleasure meeting you all and having this experience. And this is a great memory. Thank you. It was lovely to meet you all.
Love
to see
hearing
people
your
so
story.
engaged in their work, and this is amazing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Living Transplant. If you have questions or suggestions for future episodes, email us at livingorgandonation@uhn.ca.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review Living Transplant on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And follow us at Give Life UHN on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
See you next time.